Picture this. It's Friday evening. Your phone buzzes, someone's organizing a get together, and you're on the invite list. And instead of excitement, you feel something closer to quiet dread. Not because you dislike these people, not because you're sad or anxious or broken some way you haven't named yet, but because, if you're honest with yourself, the idea of staying home, your couch, your quiet, your own company, sounds like the genuinely better version of that evening in almost every way imaginable. Society has a word for people like you. They call you antisocial, a homebody. Sometimes they say it warmly, often there's an undertone of concern. But here's what nobody has actually told you. Choosing your home over a crowd isn't a personality flaw. It is a very specific, measurable kind of intelligence. You're not broken, you're not boring, and you're certainly not afraid of life. Mainstream culture built its entire social reward system around the extrovert, the person who shows up, fills the room, and comes alive under stimulation. But your brain isn't running that operating system. Here's what's actually happening inside yours. The first thing you need to understand is what's going on at the neurochemical level. Your brain doesn't respond to dopamine the same way a highly social person's brain does. Dr. Marty Olson Laney, in her foundational research on introversion published in The Introvert's Advantage, identified that introverts have a significantly heightened sensitivity to dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward seeking and external stimulation. Think of it this way. If dopamine were coffee, most extroverts need 3 shots to feel awake. You're already buzzing on 1. A loud party, a packed group chat, back-to-back conversations in a crowding room, that isn't stimulating to your brain, that's an overdose. Your preference for home isn't an absence of desire, it's the feeling of already being full. And here's what's fascinating. Your brain compensates with a different chemical entirely. Research on introversion shows that introverts rely more heavily on acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter tied to focused attention, calm satisfaction, and sustained deep thinking. While dopamine drives an extrovert toward the next external hit, acetylcholine rewards you for sitting quietly, for going inward, for turning a thought over slowly in your mind until it finally reveals something. The quiet of your home isn't emptiness, it's the exact environment where your brain chemistry does its finest work. Now, let's talk about something called sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. Psychologist Elaine Aron first identified this trait in the 1990s, and a 2014 neuroimaging study published in the journal Brain and Behavior confirmed it at the level of brain architecture. Roughly 20% of humans have nervous systems wired to process sensory and emotional information far more deeply than average. The study found that highly sensitive individuals show significantly heightened activations in brain regions linked to awareness, empathy, and the complex integration of information. What does that have to do with your home preference? A crowded restaurant with overlapping conversations, a party where you have to track 12 social threads at once, a networking event where you're performing enthusiasm for 90 straight minutes. For a highly sensitive brain, that's not socializing, that's processing overload. Your need to go home after that is not weakness, it is your nervous system executing its job with precision. Here's the third piece, and this one might change how you see your quiet evenings entirely. When you're at home, apparently doing nothing really, your brain is running one of its most powerful programs. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, or DMN. This is the neural network that activates during rest, during quiet, during inward moments, and it's responsible for some of your most essential cognitive activity: self-reflection, long-term planning, creative thinking, and the construction of your internal narrative, your actual sense of who you are. Research published in Current Opinion in Behavioral Sciences found that individuals with higher levels of DMN connectivity demonstrate significantly stronger creative thinking and greater capacity for integrating information across brain regions. Your quiet evening at home isn't idle, your brain is building something. And finally, the stress research. A study tracking participants over 21 consecutive days, published in Nature in 2023, found that days when people chose to spend more time alone, they reported feeling not only less stressed, but less controlled, less pressured to perform a version of themselves that fits someone else's expectations. those benefits were cumulative. More chosen solitude over time predicted higher autonomy scores at the end of the study. And a 2022 study published in PLOS One went further, finding the people who seek solitude from a place of genuine self-determination, not fear, not avoidance, but an authentic choice, show markedly higher capacity for self-regulation and what researchers call dispositional autonomy, the ability to live in alignment with who you actually are. Your home isn't a retreat from life, it's where you return to yourself. But here's what nobody warns you about. The same trait that makes your solitude so nourishing can make relationships feel paradoxically harder. Because when you are with people, the right people in the right conditions, you don't do it halfway. You show up with a depth and intensity that not everyone knows what to do with. You don't do surface-level conversation for sport. You arrive already full, already processed, already knowing exactly who you are and what you need from an interaction. And that can feel, to someone who refuels through a crowd, like you're withholding yourself, like you're somehow both too much and not enough at the same time. The shadow side of this trait isn't that you love home too much, it's that the world sometimes can't meet you at the depth you naturally operate from. Learning to bridge that gap without shrinking yourself to do it is the real and ongoing work. There's a quiet grief underneath all of this that doesn't get named nearly enough. It's the grief of spending years wondering if something was fundamentally wrong with you, of leaving parties early and spending the whole ride home feeling relief, then guilt about the relief, of watching other people effortlessly fill their calendars and thinking, why can't I want that? Of editing yourself in social situations, of saying, I'll try to make it when some part of you already knew you wouldn't, of performing enthusiasm for a version of life that was never actually built for your brain. How do you explain to someone that home isn't where you hide, it's where you exist at full resolution, that the quiet isn't loneliness, that being alone and being lonely are two entirely different languages, and you have always been fluent in the first one, while people mistook it for the second? You were never broken. You were never the problem. You were simply someone whose inner world was rich enough to live in. A candle doesn't need a stadium to give light. It just needs the right-sized room. If this video described you more precisely than most personality tests you've ever taken, I genuinely want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, are you someone who has fully made peace with preferring home, or do you still carry a small, quiet guilt about it sometimes? Both answers are real, and I read every single comment. If this resonated, hit subscribe. This channel exists for exactly the kind of mind that just watched this video.